See?
Yes, it's there now.
There we go. Okay, I'll say good morning because it's morning in Brazil, but hello. Thank you very much for being here, listening to my presentation. What I'm going to share with you this morning is part of my latest projects on toys world, toys research. I have to tell you that to reach this point of developing a framework entitled Toy Literacy, that was a quite organic point, I have to say. And I have to tell you that this framework is under construction. So before I start, I have to tell you that I'm very welcome to any sort of feedback from you. So to get started, I need to tell you that whether toys are made of, in case you haven't read my abstract, I'm going to repeat some of the things that are already there. Whether toys are made of metal, plastic, leather, fabric, wood, or any sort of material, toys generally seem to evoke emotional reactions and to call for cultural references. And we have to think about that first and foremost. The second thing is that we tend to take toys as an unmistakable sign of childhood, and that's true, right? But in my recent research, after being, working on these for the latest maybe 15 years, I started to consider toys as also part of adults' collection, adults' favorite items. So whenever I say children's, please also include and be sure that I'm also including adults in my words. So the main aim of my presentation this morning in Brazil is to expand the agenda of childhood studies from a linguistic perspective. This is my perspective, my personal perspective. So here I'm trying to construct a multimodal framework, which I have called so far toy literacy, to analyze toys basically in their three-dimensional features. My main aim is to reflect upon the kind of childhood that is being constructed and also to discuss the roles provided by toys' multimodal messages, especially through their material configurations. And when I say material configurations, it's because although I've been working on toy research for quite a long time, I have primarily focused for many years the analysis of toys campaigns, toys texts, but not their materiality. So I think this framework may be particularly useful for different social sectors, from academic to more general public, in order to show how toys communicate and reinforce stereotypes and social behaviors through their verbal and the visual choices. Again, verbal choices are very important to be mentioned. And here I include their design, their packages, their campaigns, and also the social structures that pertain to their gender and cultural representation. So yes, my focus here has been on four main objectives. The first one is to expand the toy, actually to provide a toy literacy, to analyze toys in their three-dimensional features, as I've just said, to expand the agenda of childhood studies, especially from a linguistic perspective, to provide different audiences with a tool to decode toys' multimodal messages. And when I say, again, different audiences, I mentioned the academic, the public, the economic, the educational, and also to provide a meta language to decode these messages provided by toys, verbal and visual choices, through their design, their packages, and their campaigns. Before I go on, I have to mention Celender's very important contribution to toy research, together with Carmen Rosa Caldas Coulthard, also Van Leeuwen, Makin, Peljaka, all of this academic research. Although the academic research on toys multimodal messages has been quite, I would say it hasn't been sufficiently addressed, but it has been those who have applied, who have devoted to this study have done in a very beautiful way, and I really would like to address their contribution to the field. So as I said, my main interest as a linguist is to construct this multimodal framework to reflect upon the kind of childhood that has been constructed mainly through toys, material configurations, and also assuming, very aware that the concept of literacy presupposes the development of one's ability to read and interpret the process of production and reception of a multiplicity of semiotic codes. So before I go on, of course, I have to mention my background, my previous multimodal analysis. They have started actually with my PhD study developed under the supervision of Dr. Luis Ravelli at the University of New South Wales in Australia a few years ago. And I have primarily focused on dolls, both in their 2- and 3-dimensional configurations. But in this first phase, my main concern was on fashion dolls. And in my PhD, in terms of this project's results, I was investigating the verbal and the visual texts of the web advertisements of best-selling Brazilian doll, Suzy, and the North American dolls, the Bratz. At that time, these were the best-selling dolls, even more than Barbie. That was developed in the early 2000s. And it was possible to relate, at that time, it was possible to relate this doll's representation to a rather stereotyped view of the female figure. For that purpose, at that time, I applied the grammar of visual design and also systemic functional grammar as tools for my analysis. Later, in the mid-2010s, my studies focused in issues such as representation, diversity, and inclusion in toys. Although, yes, they pointed out to a tendency towards a more realistic depiction in lines like Mattel's Barbie. Yes, she has been added more diversity into her material configurations, but it also signaled a lack of representation in relation to all the toys and also Barbies, showcasing disabled children in order to reflect a more disability-inclusive society. I also have to thank American Girl, Toy Like Me, Lemily, my family builders, for allowing me to reproduce images of their toys in their packages, websites, social media campaigns. Now, finally, my latest multimodal analysis, before I reach this point that I'm going to present to you this morning, my latest multimodal analysis on baby dolls and their packages relate an increasingly modality level in contemporary baby dolls. And these I relate to a highly prescriptive playing script as tendencies in Brazilian baby dolls of the mid-2010s. What my results have corroborated is the interrelation between toys design, their embedded meanings, and their playing affordances, which attests, yes, to the feasibility and the embedded meaning and the applicability of a linguistic-based approach to the analysis of toys' 3-dimensional features. So this is a summary of my 3 latest projects, my toy projects developed under the financial support of the Brazilian National Council for Research. The first project was entitled Toys on Focus, the second Multimodality in Childhood, and the third one, the one I'm developing now, is Toy Literacy. Some of the pictures back in 2017, I had the chance, the honor, to be chosen as a researcher, to be working as a researcher at the Strong National Museum in Rochester, New York, and the images I'm going to show to you were taken there. So this baby, this Dai-Di baby, is one of the first baby dolls. Her manual says what every young mother should know. Lily David baby doll from 1977, and Hush Little Baby, 1977, also says, Little David baby doll especially says, this doll, her package says, This doll has true-to-life features which differentiate little girls from little boys. For those who feel they do not want their children to be aware of this difference, we do not recommend this doll. And Hush Little Baby has some items that I'm going to comment afterwards. So yes, toy research can be seen from various perspectives. So in a sense, what I'm trying to say is that one of the perspectives is the psychological perspective, that toy playing enhances the development of children's physical and emotional skills. From a linguistic perspective, on the other hand, toys should be regarded as a meeting place for various discourse. They've also been called miniaturized social actors by authors such as Caldas Coulthard and Van Leeuwen himself. Commercially, it has been propagated that toys need to be sturdy and attractively designed to please both children and their parents. And pedagogically, toys should be preferably used as props, not in terms of predefined storylines in order to expand children's playing possibilities. So I'm going to show to you some of my findings, some of the findings of this last project that I developed in Brazil on baby dolls multimodality. The first doll I'm going to present to you is an Alussorinho. This is her package. Minha Dodói Gessinho. The titles, of course, are in Portuguese. They are all in diminutive. It means my little sick baby, something like that. Gessinho, plaster. I have Betsy and Nina baby doll. Okay, the findings of this last phase of my project states that all these dolls, they have their level of modality increased in terms of naturalistic modality and also sensorial modality. For example, Nina baby, her cheeks get red when she's exposed to the sun. Betsy doll does the same. Nino's collection, this Nino baby collection, he smells like a real baby. He makes the sounds of a baby. He weighs like a baby. Minha Dodói Gessinho and Ana Alussorinho both cry real tears when you apply the injection. The heart beats like a real heart. And you can, in Ana Alussorinho, you can also play listening to your baby's heart, and the baby pees. So it's very important that this is verbally stated in the packages of these baby dolls. These are some of the findings, very briefly presenting to you. They tend to be very prescriptive in terms of representational function. They do not foster plain affordances in the sense that the plain script is almost given in this sense. They tend to call for more anthropomorphism. The dolls tend to become humanized. They clearly state medical duties that the player, needs to know how to play, needs to master these medical duties. They tend to be very sensorial in the sense that they smell, they weigh, they cry, they giggle, they look like real babies, their cheeks get red. And their representations tend to be very naturalistic. There is also a very clear discourse of maternity, of nurturing in these dolls' packages, which points to gender roles that have been traditionally attributed to girls playing. So they are not encouraged to be sisters of these babies. They are really encouraged to be mothers, and also cumulative tasks. They need to be mothers, and they need to master how to play and to master these medical abilities. I've also mentioned these dolls' names, which point always in the diminutive, mostly in the diminutive, which points to interpersonal closeness, emotional appeal. I've also talked about traditional gender roles and maintenance of traditional ethnic models. So we can only see from all the packages that we have photographed in Brazil, most of the packages, almost 99% of them, always tend to picture white girls on the packages. Also, the traditional colors have been maintained, and there is an emphasis on the truth value at the discursive level, de verdade, for real. So this bringing awareness to the consumer that these dolls are going to be like real babies. So now sharing with you my toy literacy framework. I have to tell you first that one of the theoretical possibilities that I have been applying to analyze toys, oral, olfactory, and tactile aspect has been through Kress and Van Leeuwen's subsystem of modality within the interactive visual meta function. So especially, this has been proved effective for the analysis of toys properties as three-dimensional objects. For Kress and Van Leeuwen, I guess we all know, the more an object looks like what we see in reality, the higher its naturalistic modality or its naturalistic criterion. That can incorporate, in terms of toys analysis, their tactile dimensions, how an object feels and handles its weight. They also consider, Kress and Van Leeuwen also consider the sensorial criterion, which includes how an object affects the viewer in terms of sensorial orientational criterion or modality. For authors like Varney, toy's pleasure principle, on the other hand, derives from what she regards as technocracy of sensuality. This is a term that she uses to refer to the sensorial mechanisms like sound, smell, weight, light effects, which are added by the industry to make toys more appealing at the sensorial level. According to my toy findings, this tends to lower their play value. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that by making toys more sensual, this has to do with making more attractive through colors, smell, flavor, light, sound, that is making them more sensually appealing. And this is for marketing purposes, of course. Now, for authors like Fleming, he relates the notion of tactile attachment to the flexibility and cuddliness of some toys, including teddy bears, whose production initiated in 1903, if I'm not mistaken. So for him, harder representationality is a concept that has to do with the high degree of realism of toys like baby dolls. Now, seen in perspective, what I'm trying to say is that at the sensorial level, the concepts of tactile attachment and technocracy of sensuality, they seem to hold an equivalence or an equivalent correspondence to Kress and Van Leeuwen's concept of sensory modality. Whereas at the representational level, the notion of harder representationality seems to bear resemblance to the concept of naturalistic modality. So the toy theory aims to combine all these concepts to be in one single framework to be used for toys analysis. And this is where we arrive at, where we reach. So in material terms, the description and analysis of toys, oral, olfactory, and tactile aspects, or I would say a first level of observation would be to refer to toys classification as more or less humanized, or if humanized or non-humanized. This seems to be a very simple identification. Yes, I am aware, I know, but this has to do with the degree of realism of toys like baby-like dolls, whose naturalistic and sensory modality seems to be, in Kress and Van Leeuwen's terms, is so high that they can be considered as highly humanized toys, especially designed to look, smell, and weight like real babies. That would be the first criterion. The second one, once a given toy is classified as humanized or non-humanized, its modality level should be observed in terms of its sensory or naturalistic modality. A toy's classification as more or less sensorial depends on how subjectively this toy's materiality affects the player at the interpersonal level in two main aspects: its sensuality and its tactile attachment. The first one involves the toy's appeal to the player's senses in terms of smell, flavor, weight, sounds, and light. A common example would be toys designed to scent like flowers, to scent like fruits, to babies and toys with lighting and sound effects. These effects are maximized, they tend to be maximized at their full spectrum. In such cases, these toys can be classified as more or less sensorial in terms of their sensuality. Now, checking on toy sensory classification in terms of tactile attachment, on the other hand, implies paying attention to the relationship between their material constitution and the affective reaction. And yes, I am aware that talking about affection is very subjective. I'm totally aware of that. But it's impossible to talk about toys without talking about affection. So again, paying attention at the tactile attachment aspect would be paying attention at their material constitution and the affective reaction that such materiality enhances. So whether a toy is made of cotton, fur, plastic, or wood, a different response is raised in the player at a tactile level, like this. So this tends to promote more or less, or high or low affective reaction. For example, soft and plush toys or rag dolls like this one. They tend to evoke feelings of reassurance, of intimacy, security through their material quality. So they tend to be regarded as more effective. On the other hand, toys made of hard materials such as metal, iron, wood, they tend to call for low affective reactions in terms of tactile attachment, but they may evoke more emotional feelings in the player by means of its naturalistic modality associated to the notion of harder representationality. Now, talking about naturalistic modality, toys coding orientation for naturalistic modality, on the other hand, refers to how close to reality this given representation is. So it could be regarded as more or less naturalistic. The more real a given toy looks, the more prescriptive it can be considered in terms of its harder representationality. So that seems to be the case not only of extremely realistic baby dolls, but also of costume and fashion dolls like Barbie, war toys, replica animals, and cars, all of which tend to have a very high level of prescription in terms of harder representationality. So when compared to other kinds of toys like Nino's baby, for example, can be considered as more prescriptive, more sensorial, but toys made with less effective materials tend to be less sensorial, but this does not apply to baby-like dolls whose level of sensuality is generally very high. So, practically speaking, I don't know how much time I have. Janina, please.
You still have 10 minutes, around 10 minutes, yes.
In practical terms, taking the example of Brazilian baby dolls such as Coleção Nino that I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, from the perspective of my proposed toy literacy framework, I would say that this baby doll could be considered as being designed to look, smell, sound, weigh like a real baby. This Brazilian baby doll could be considered, his material configuration could be described as more humanized in that its sensory modality level is increased by its manufacturer to subjectively affect the player at the interpersonal level in both sensuality and tactile attachment dimensions. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that Nino's baby doll can be classified as more sensorial, more effective. And despite being made of hard plastic, these dolls or baby-like dolls, baby dolls, end up calling for more effective reactions in terms of its tactile attachment, of their tactile attachment, because they tend to evoke a sense of affection, of comfort, of tenderness, of closeness through their material configurations. On the other hand, due to its highly prescriptive material features, Nino's baby doll coding orientation for modality can be considered as more naturalistic in terms of its harder representationality. However, it must be said that despite coming with some predefined physical props, which suggests, yes, a given playing script, it is ultimately children themselves who who organize the course of their playing activity, because they are inherently endowed with this capacity to move out from the manufacturer's pre-imposed storyline in order to reframe this playing script according to their playing needs. And I need to address that. So in a nutshell, baby dolls like Coleção Nino, degree of modality can be considered as more humanized, more sensorial in terms of sensuality, more effective in terms of their tactile attachment, more prescriptive in terms of their naturalistic features regarding their harder representationality. Another perspective could be applying to handcrafted toys, which I need to address to this handmade ballerina doll that I have here. She's made in crochet with a mixed line of cotton and synthetic material, and she's filled with synthetic wool. It is possible to notice a totally different material configuration regarding the meanings conveyed by such a non-manufactured playing artifact and its effective values. In terms of these dolls' reality values, one can argue that it could be classified as more humanized, since yes, it carries all human features that can describe her as a young girl through its clear design. In what concerns its sensory modality level, although its sensorial features are not available due to its handcrafted nature, one can say that interpersonally, such a ballerina doll interacts with the player more effectively in its tactile attachment dimension. This is mostly attributed to the sense of connection and cherish that materials such as crochet evoke. Moreover, regarding its naturalistic features, one can say that such a doll's design seems to foster a more creative sort of playing through its less prescriptive features in terms of its harder representationality. And yes, authors have agreed that handcrafted dolls or toys with no pre-established props, they tend to open up for children's imaginative potential in relation to their playing, as opposed to manufactured baby dolls such as Coleção Nino. And I'm not here in favor of one or another, just mentioning what I have found out. This realism of baby dolls like Nino, they tend to end up encouraging little girls to act as future mothers, as I said. Last but not least, very fast, trying to apply the same toy literacy framework to the analysis of to the modality of war toys like Marvel's Captain America. I have to address Mackin and Van Leeuwen's text, Toys as Discourse, Children's War Toys, and the War on Terror, which were profoundly important for my studies. If analyzed from a toy literacy perspective, they have a work on toy guns, in which they say that on the tactile level, war toys such as toy guns can be considered as far from the real thing as they can be, because they are generally surprisingly lightweight and insubstantial. So they call much more for playful and fantasy gun than from a realistic perspective on guns. Now, if I apply this toy framework to the analysis of industrialized toys like war toys, such as best-selling Marvel Studios Civil War Captain America, one can say that despite being considered less humanized given its low life features, less sensorial in terms of its sensuality, because it does not call for any oral, olfactory, or visual sensation, less tactile and less effective in being made of material like hard plastic, it does not stimulate the creation of any emotional bond with the child. But it can, however, be described as more prescriptive. So this is basically how this it can be described as more prescriptive in terms of its harder representationality, because its storyline is practically given as a manual to the child player or the adult player. So all in all, I can summarize my parameters of these three analyzer toys, like Coleção Nino, Captain American in this playful table, and Crochet Ballerina. These are some of my references. I would like to say that the innovative aspect of a theory, being mine or not mine, is that it's very important for us to pay some attention to toy research, and also to combine perspectives from several fields such as education, social semiotics, visual and cultural studies, linguistics, in the elaboration, towards the elaboration of a theory aimed at assisting different social sectors, which really need to look at toys design in a more systematic and in a more critical way. So here's my contact. Here's my project homepage. And thank you very much, Janina, for allowing me to speak about my project.